Hey guys, it's your girl Miss Low BSN RN. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome. If this is not your first time and you're coming back, thanks for coming back and sharing some time with me. Today I want to talk about what it takes to be a travel nurse. I've had a lot of suggestions and wants for this video, so if you want to know what it's like to be a travel nurse, stay tuned. So if you guys don't know, I'm 26 years old. I am a CVICU travel nurse. I have been traveling for 1 year this past February. So I'll just let you know about my experience a little bit and some of the things that you need to know about being a travel nurse, the good, the bad, all that stuff. So I decided to become a travel nurse after having about 2.5 years of staff experience. I decided that, traveling was something I wanted to do. I always knew I probably wanted to do it. I just didn't know when. I had been exposed to travel nursing all the way back as a child with somebody that I knew, a family friend. And even when I didn't even think I wanted to be a travel nurse, or a nurse in general, which is a thing. If you want to check out my video on how I became a nurse, and go check it out because it's not a conventional type of way. So I already knew about it then. I always thought that was so cool. And when I became an actual staff nurse, I knew that eventually I wanted to become a travel nurse. And I was always traveling and things anyway, going all over the place. So I said, why not, experience actually being able to travel and work at the same time. So I applied with the company and I have been traveling ever since. My first assignment was in Baltimore, Maryland. It was a great experience. And I was there for 3 months. And then after that, I went to Phoenix, Arizona. I thought I was going to be there for 3 months and I ended up staying for 6 months. It also was a great experience. I had a great time. And then these past 3 months, I've actually been back in Florida doing a local contract because you can do what they call local traveling, and we'll get into that as well. I didn't want to be cold for the winter time, so I came back home to Florida where the winters are great. So I've been having a great experience so far. And that's a quick little rundown of where I have been so far, and I'm pretty sure I'll go a lot of great other places. So a couple of things that you need to know. I do write things down to make sure we don't forget anything. You do need to have at least 2 years experience, in my opinion, although in order to apply to a travel agency, the requirement is only 1 year. I would at least tell you to have 2 years. Some people say even longer than that, but it depends on how competent you feel. The thing with being a nurse for only 1 year and becoming a travel nurse is that, your first year, you're just starting to kind of get your own rhythm. You're understanding what a sick patient looks like. You're understanding how to use your resources, your time management, your charting skills, things of that nature. And it takes about a good year to become comfortable and competent with that. And then, when you're leading into your second year, you feel more comfortable with all those things. So at the end of your second year, you should feel good enough to go ahead and apply to a travel company if that is what you're wanting to do. So I would say at least 2 years. Another thing about travel nursing, you can go anywhere. Travel nurses are needed all over the country, which is an amazing thing. I know a lot of people are going to ask me about pay, and the pay is significantly better and higher than when you're staff. But one thing about the pay for sure is if you go to places that they call destination locations, such as those, which are locations that everybody wants to go to, the pay will be a little bit less than you're expecting because it's a supply and demand type of thing. So for example, I came to Florida in the winter. A lot of people want to come to Florida in the winter. So the pay might not be as high as it would be during the other times of years. Places that really need people in rural areas that it's kind of hard to get people to go to, the prices and the pay will be a little bit higher because they need the people, and it's a supply and demand issue. Another thing is that I get asked a lot, specialty will not necessarily guarantee, you a job more than somebody who is not specialized, but it does give you a little bit more options. So yes, if you are an L&D nurse, if you are a peds ICU nurse or things of that nature, your spots are a little bit more coveted because it takes a little extra training and different types of knowledge and sets in order to take care of those patients. So yes, that is true, because I get that question a lot. So, and also I would, in my opinion, if it's your first time traveling, you can ask your recruiter to send you to places that are travel nurse friendly. So that means there's a lot of travel nurses there. There are some places, they only need 1 or 2 travelers for their whole entire unit. So you're not gonna, most places are gonna be staff and things like that, which is not bad. Staff is fine, but you like to link up with travelers, especially your first time, because there's nothing like a travel nurse experience. The travel nurse experience is very different from being a staff nurse. I would suggest for the first time that you go to some place that's travel nurse friendly. You can ask the traveler, especially if they're seasoned, what's been their experience, what to do, things of that nature. Those are just a little like straight hard cold facts, and then we'll get into the good and the bad. I like to start with the bad because I like my bad news first and my good news later. So let's start with the bad news, quote unquote. One of the biggest things about being a travel nurse that can be kind of difficult is finding housing. Companies do provide housing for you. However, if you take the company housing, they take it out of your pay. The company housing does tend to be a little bit more expensive than if you were to go to find housing on your own. So a lot of travel nurses find housing through Airbnb, furnishfinder.com, VRBO. There are Facebook groups that for people that just rent to travel nurses only. And I will put all these links down in the description box so you guys can look at those, month to month type things, because most travel nurse assignments are only 13 weeks, so 3 months. It's really hard to find apartments that will lease to you for 3 months. Some apartments will do a month to month basis, but it's sometimes a little bit harder for that. So that's one of the biggest things about being a travel nurse that can be kind of nerve-wracking. My suggestion and what I have done, most recruiters will let you know all the places that are available for travel nurse positions based on your specialty. And if you see a couple places that you want to go to, I would go on these websites and see what their range of housing payment looks like. How much does it cost to kind of live there, and compare it to how much the potential pay that they will be giving you, that the company will be giving you, and see if that's something that you would like to do. See if housing is hard to find there, if housing is easy to find there. Some places they don't have a lot of rental options, so therefore places that are to rent are going to be more expensive and things like that. So that's a suggestion that I would give to you about that. When it comes to travel nursing, your first couple of days or so on the floor, you might be lonely. Nobody knows who you are. You are the new person. Some staff is very, very nice, and some staff, it takes them a little bit longer to kind of warm up to people, and it's okay. But that's just something that you have to know, that you might feel kind of lonely in the beginning. You also might feel kind of like a ship out of water too, if where you were as staff, maybe you were the senior nurse, maybe you were somebody that people came to for questions and advice and things like that. And now, like I said, you're the new person. They don't really know your skill set. They don't know what you're capable of. So you might not get the sickest patient there. They need to see that you're competent enough to do what you said you can do. Another thing with competency, you have to be able to hit the ball running. Some places, they don't even really give you an orientation. One travel nurse assignment that I did, I got a week orientation, about the hospital and everything like that. And then I got 2 days of orienting on the floor to learn charting, learn how, policies and procedures for that floor. But they expect for you to already know assessments. They expect for you to already know the basic medicines. Of course, if you don't know some other medicines, you can look them up, to know what a sick patient looks like, to know to tell the charge nurse if something doesn't seem right. So that's why it's very important that when you become a travel nurse, that you feel confident in your skills, because they expect for you to step right in and to help, because they are short staffed. That's what a travel nurse does. They fill in for the void of the staff. So you have to be able to hit the ball running. I did one assignment where I got no training. I think I got like 1 shift worth of training, but then something happened and they needed me to take a patient load. So I got 6 hours of training, and I was expected to know how to take care of my patient and to ask for help and to ask for certain resources if I needed them. It's very important that you are able to adapt and jump right in. Another thing is, which is not good or bad, but you have to be able to adapt and be flexible. When you come in, you might be floated a lot. If you don't know what floated means, if another floor needs a nurse because they're short staffed, 9 times out of 10, you will be the first to go. The traveler is always the first to be floated. So you might not get, like when you were staffed, that cushion of knowing that you're always going to be on your floor, or you're going to take turns floating, because some places they don't take turns floating. It's always the traveler, no matter what, will float. That can be a good or a bad thing depending on who you are. Some people don't like floating, but it is part of the process when you are a travel nurse that you will float. You have no paid time off. There are some companies that you will accrue paid time off, but it's way slower than when you were a staff nurse. So when you take vacation and things like that, you have to have money saved up because you're not going to be getting paid while you are on vacation. Another part about that is when you become a travel nurse, especially the first time and even times thereafter, have some money saved. I was glad somebody told me that, because I used to talk to a lot of travel nurses and ask a lot of questions. And this was the only travel nurse that actually gave me this bit of advice. And I was so glad that she gave it to me. When you first become a travel nurse, you do not get paid right away. You get paid like a week or so after you get there. So for example, like when I went to Maryland, I obviously had to take time getting there, take hotels, pay for that. And then I didn't get there the very first day of my job. So you have to have money for that, deposits, money to obviously buy groceries, buy gas. I did a whole week of work, and then I had to wait until the next following week, that Friday. So basically it's 2 weeks with no pay. And then on top of that, you've just relocated. So if you don't have any money saved or put aside, or you're not ready for that, it can kind of be draining to your bank account. I was so glad somebody told me that. So I'm letting you know that little tidbit. Have some money put aside for things like that. Every time you relocate, it does take money to do that. So have some money put aside. And especially if you're not going to work, like say you want to quit your staff job and take off a couple weeks before you start travel nursing, you need to take that into account because there will not be any pay. Something that doesn't really have to do with the actual hospital part of travel nursing, but can be kind of cumbersome, like your hair. So every time you move 3 months, you have to find somebody. If you go to a salon, you have to find somebody to do your hair. You have to find a new nail person. You have to find the new grocery store. You have to find the new hottest restaurants if you're into that, or the new bars or things like that. And it can be kind of annoying to, find those type of things. You got to find your rhythm. And then once you usually find somebody, especially like for nails or hair or like skin, when you find the person that you like, it's time to go. And go somewhere else. So it can be kind of cumbersome to deal with that. But some people, they don't really have a problem with it. For me, that was one of the more stressful parts outside of the actual nursing realm, outside of the hospital, was finding people, because I am very big into like my hair, my nails and things like that. And it was kind of driving me crazy. So that's just a little thing that can be annoying. Another thing that some people do not tell you is that you always don't know your next assignment. You think you have an idea about where you're going to go, and then something happens, or the paperwork doesn't go through, or they already got the travelers that they need at the last minute, and then you don't have anywhere to go. So you think you're going to have this assignment loaded up, and then you don't have anything. So that's another reason why you have to have money put aside as well, because sometimes you can get in a rigmarole. It doesn't happen that much, but know that is a possibility of travel nursing, that things might happen. That's how I ended up in Arizona. I was supposed to try to go somewhere else, and it didn't work out. And then I ended up in Arizona, and I loved it, but that wasn't my plan. So you have to still, again, be very flexible. Another thing that can be kind of annoying is the paperwork. So when you first apply to a travel agency, they want to do, references, the application, the skills checklist, which can take a long time. You have to do competency exams for them. You have to get immunization records, titers, all those things. Go around doing all this paperwork. If you don't have the license for that state, you have to do your licensing, which usually includes some extra fingerprints. If you have a good company, they will reimburse you for all this, but most of the time people are working full time when this is happening. So it also becomes like another full-time job. That's another bad thing about it. But once you got all your paperwork and things like that, then you're usually good to go with that, and they will it's not going to happen again, but it sometimes takes a while for all that stuff. Health insurance. If you I have to get health insurance and things like that. Sometimes that can be a little bit cumbersome too. Most companies, they do offer health insurance, they do offer 401k, but sometimes they don't, and sometimes the rate is really high. So my suggestion to people, I went and got private health insurance. I'm only a single person though. I know some people who have families, it's a little bit harder. If you are married, you can try to get on your partner's insurance, is another thing I have learned out there as well. So those are some things that are bad. So I'll go to the good part. So the biggest good thing is, of course, the pay. The pay is definitely a lot better. When I was a staff nurse, I was working 6-7 days a week, mainly because I had things I wanted to pay off, and then I have a certain lifestyle that I like to live, and that's nothing wrong with that. But I was having to work a lot extra in order to make sure I could fulfill the lifestyle that I wanted. When I became a travel nurse, I didn't really have to do that anymore. I worked 3 days, had a lot more time to myself. I wasn't as stressed out. I wasn't as sleep deprived. That's one really good part about it. Travel nursing is extremely flexible. For example, after every assignment, I tend to take off almost a month in between work. You don't have to do that at all, but you can take off as much time as you want. I know some travel nurses who literally work 6 months out the year and then they take off for the rest of the 6 months. So it's very flexible, and you don't have to, keep continuing working if that's not what you want to do. Of course, it's flexible with the places you want to go. You can go anywhere you want to go, see anything you want to see. And have those experiences as well. It also makes you a well-rounded nurse because, like I said, you're able to adapt, you're able to be flexible, you're able to jump right in and adapt to other hospitals' cultures, because every hospital has a culture of their own policies and procedures. And it makes you really well-rounded because you can see different ways that hospitals do things. Another good thing about it, of course, is you meet people. There are people that I never would have met if I would have never became a travel nurse. People that will be in my life for the rest of my life, friends, other travel nurses that are basically like become your family. That's one of the amazing parts about travel nursing, is having that experience. And it also gives you the chance to actually live somewhere. You're there for 13 weeks. You can say you lived there, but by the time you've been at a place for almost 90 days, you've been to the grocery store, you've been to the bank, you've been to the restaurants, you've been to the extracurricular activities that they have. The streets, the back roads. So you can say I lived there. I was a Houstonian. I was somebody who was from California, so, and it also, you can potentially stay there longer. And then if you really like it, maybe you can become staff, and that's the place that you can live, and you can set up, your own life there. Another thing is you don't have to do what staff has to do a lot of the times, which for me was amazing. I was always going to staff meetings, especially being a CVICU nurse. There's a lot of mandatory education on extra as in comparison to other nurses. So I was always doing that, always going to staff meetings, always doing extra education. And as a travel nurse, you don't really need to do anything like that if you don't want to. If you want to be nice and go to a staff meeting, you can, but it's not a requirement. Only thing is you required is that you show up, you're professional, you work well with others, you keep up your education for your licensure and maybe for what your company needs, and that's it. So that's a really good perk. You don't have to really be caught up into all that. So that was really cool. The first time they were like, oh, you don't have to stay for a staff meeting. You're not staff. I'm like, perfect. Let me go home and go to sleep. So that was really cool. You can do local traveling. In order to be considered a travel nurse, you only have to be 50 miles away from your tax home. And your tax home is where you are paying mortgage or rent or that type of thing like that. So if you wanted to try to do local first, just to see if you would like it or not, you can go 50 miles up the road. Like for example, right now I'm doing a local assignment. It's about 90 miles away, but I'm able, just to go do my days and then come back home. You can still kind of, have your same life and type of way, if that's what you want. So that's a really good thing about it as well. Some other advice for you is, if it's something that you feel like you want to do, go for it. Travel nursing is so much fun. It's so rewarding. And if you don't like it, that's okay. And the thing is, you can always go back to be staff. But if it's something that you've been thinking about, you should try it. Another thing is, your recruiter is very important. Find a good recruiter. Recruiter will make or break your experience as a travel nurse. Your company does matter, but your recruiter matters more. The way you can find good recruiters is talk to travel nurses. Ask them what companies they're with. Ask them why they like this company or that company. Ask them who the recruiter is. Most travel nurses have no problem sharing their recruiter. So you can get, their recruiter and say that you were referred by this person. And your recruiter is going to be your advocate. Your recruiter is going to be the person that you talk to about any problems that may arise. You are not staff, you're not part of the hospital, so your recruiter is going to be your liaison for anything that might happen. So that is very important that you find a good recruiter. If you feel like you want to be a travel nurse, somebody gave me this bit of advice, and I'm glad that they did. After you've been a nurse for a year, try to sign up with a per diem agency if that is something that you can do. Because with per diem agencies, they usually staff to more than one hospital on more than one floor. And what they will do when you work a per diem shift, they will send you to where they need you to go. And it forces you to see if you're able to adapt and be flexible to another hospital or to another floor and what they're requiring, because you don't really tend to know where you're going until that day. And it also gets you ready to do things like, the checklist, the tests, the immunizations, because those type of agencies, they all need the same thing. And most PRN agencies, you tend to have a travel agency connected to them if you ever want to go ahead and switch over to the travel side. That's why I decided to go after 2.5 years of experience, because I had also on the side been doing PRN agency, and I realized that I was able to adapt and able to be flexible with being thrown into situations that I typically wouldn't be thrown into on my regular floor as a staff nurse. And maybe you might realize that you don't really like being out of your comfort zone, or you don't like being thrown into situations. You kind of like, knowing what's going to happen, which is okay. And then you can realize maybe that traveling is not for me. So that's something that I would definitely suggest. And it's a good perk because the PRN agencies, they tend to pay a little bit more than even if you did like overtime at your floor. So, a little bit extra change on the side never hurt anybody. So yes, that is my advice and my experience about being a travel nurse. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave a comment below. If you do not feel comfortable leaving a comment, you can always email me at misslowbsnrn@gmail.com and I will get back to you. If you want to see my travels and tidbits, I'll put everything on my Instagram, so feel free to follow me on social media. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I would love to keep doing videos with you guys. If you have any suggestions for anything, other videos in reference to nursing, don't hesitate to put those down there, because I'm definitely taking suggestions and I will do what is being suggested. And I will share my experiences with you guys. If any of you have any other bits of advice or bits of experience that you want to share with us that I didn't put on here, feel free to leave a comment to just share. This is for everybody, so they can learn and understand and get a feel for things out there, just to share with everybody. So like I said, do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.